Welcome, listeners. I'm Dylan. I'm in grade 10. This is my second year on the team, but I've been involved with robotics for longer. I'm on the coding team and awards team.
I'm Alexis. This is my third year on the team. I'm in grade 12, and I am the finance lead and a senior builder on the team. We are your guest hosts for today's podcast.
Our team, Manitoulin and Metal, is located at Chaging High School, MSS. We've done the robotics thing for a few years now.
So today's podcast is going to be under pressure, finding strength in the strain.
So under pressure, it's like kind of a big thing during robotics. Like as it gets closer to the competitions, we have to get things done. And it's really, really stressful sometimes. So it's really important to deal with this stress and pressure. So another reason that under pressure, it kind of has to do with our game this year, which is...
First dive. So this year's robotics competition is water-themed. So it's focused on the ocean. I always thought the ocean was so fascinating, but also so terrifying because what happens if a shark comes up while I'm swimming?
I know, right? And one thing I learned in science class is that there's also this pretty terrifying thing in the ocean called the bends. Not the Radiohead album, but it's like when you go up in the surface, nitrogen gets really quickly released into your blood, which is really dangerous. So when I was younger, I wanted to go scuba diving, but I mean, not so much, because now you have to be put in a hyperbaric chamber. It's pretty terrifying.
But what do we do when the pressure builds up in our minds and we feel like we're underwater and can't resurface in a safe way? We've got to find a way to deal with that. So...
in this month's episode, we'll be talking about feeling under pressure and finding strength in strain. So stay tuned for the segments on the importance of good mental health, the science behind stress, and an interview, and our tips for managing your stress.
39% of high school students experience moderate to serious psychological distress. Did you know that, Dylan?
No, but did you know that between 15 and 25% of Canadian youth experience bad mental health as well, or they turn 19? It's kind of crazy. Like we said, it's very important to have good mental health, but why is it as important as physical health? Because it's an extremely important thing. So mental health affects your daily life, your relationships with other people, and your overall well-being.
When you don't take care of your mental health, you go into sometimes a slump, which means that you can't be as healthy as you should be, which is what happens when you're not physically active as well. Yeah,
and it can lead to physical issues also. So you get headaches, fatigue, and a weakened immune system. Sometimes I've had bad mental health in the past. I'm really stressed or not feeling really scared about a project I have coming up. And then I go to sleep really late because I keep thinking about it. It just makes me really, really weak, and it's horrible. So
you can also experience mood swings or feeling really overwhelmed. Even this week, going back to school after exams, I felt really overwhelmed with all of my new work because in grade 12, they kind of laid on a little bit heavier than grade 11. So there was a lot to do. And I didn't feel very motivated this week because I hadn't taken care of my mental health from exams.
Yeah, that was kind of the same thing with me too. I just went into a whole bunch of grade 11 courses. It was really, really difficult compared to the other one. I'm really stressed with it, but I know that there's ways to deal with it, which we'll get into later. So this kind of bad mental health can also cause you to have withdrawals from friends, families, or hobbies. So you'd stay away from normal things that you do in your day-to-day lives. Like, I used to hang out with friends a lot before exams. It's kind of a good stress release. But now, once the exams started coming up, I stayed away from them more, stayed in my room, studying for the test, stressing.
And it really makes you isolated too, because like these are things that you love doing, like robotics, musical, hang out with friends, or even your pets, and then you're withdrawing from them. So you're making yourself isolated and having to deal with all of this all by yourself.
Yeah. So, mental struggles are normal. It happens to everyone. And seeking help is a very good point in this. It's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength, because sometimes it can be challenging to talk about. So you need to have those open conversations about your emotions and your struggles with a trusted friend, adult. So I have a story about my mental health once. Start of semester of my grade 9 year, I'd never done exams before, and I was really scared of them. I also had some culminatings that I was dealing with, and I just didn't know how to handle it, all that stress. So one thing that I did to help me deal with that was I just took a break, stopped for a bit, thought about all the issues. I had to acknowledge it to get all that stress out. Took a couple deep breaths, went to sleep at night earlier, and then I came back better than ever, and I did really well on my exam and my culminatings.
Sponsor shout out. Our first sponsor shout out of this podcast is going to Heartstrong Rentals. Thank you for being a sponsor.
Okay, so let's look at the science behind stress and mental health issues. What actually happens to your brain when you're stressed, Alexis?
When we experience stress, the brain releases adrenaline and cortisol hormones that prepare us for action. This response is essential in smaller situations, like staying alert, turbulence on an airplane. Like, do you remember that when we went on the plane to Houston?
Yeah, that was my first time flying. It was a little stressful being on a plane. I've never been there before, so it was...
I guess that was just our cortisol hormones and adrenaline when that happened.
Yeah. However, chronic stress or stress that occurs often and long-term can take a toll on your brain and overall health.
Prolonged exposure to these hormones can cause inflammation, so your red puffy face, like when you wake up in the morning, dysfunction of the brain that affects mood and memory,
and increased risk of developing neurological conditions like dementia, depression, headaches, migraines, and even a stroke. Yes, I've experienced that kind of thing before. During a big essay that I was writing in English class, I was really stressed, and I started getting like a really big headache because of that stress that I was feeling, and it was like really bad. I almost had to go home. You got any?
This also happened to me during robotics because I was worried about a huge project that I had to do, and I was in the build room, I was building stuff, and I was right in the middle of a project, so I felt really torn to like be in two places at once. So I ended up deciding to push off the project and have somebody else take over it and teach them how to do it and focus on the underlying issue of the stress so that I could like deduce it or try and get rid of it. And I also took a break in between to give myself a bit of a refresh so I could calm down. I took some deep breaths and I went for a walk, and then I was less stressed.
Yeah, like during one of our off-season competitions, I was driving for the first time, and I had no clue what I was doing for part of it. Really stressful. My head was pounding. Everything was shaking. And then I took a breath and realized it doesn't matter that much. Like, the worst that's going to happen is that we lose the match. It's not going to be too bad. So it's really important to realize that fact that it's not the end of the world if you do bad in that project or like I was doing driving, nothing's too bad's going to come of it. Sponsor shout out. This is for Henley Boats. They donated and cut aluminum for our team. Thank you so much.
Emma Chapman is a school social worker with the Rainbow District School Board. She is a master's in social work graduate and specialized in child and family counseling. Alex interviewed her about strategies for stress management.
During big projects time or when there's some big event coming up, what are some strategies you recommend to de-stress?
Okay, so there's so many things out there and it depends what works for you, but I feel like the big one and I know everyone talks about deep breathing all the time, but to activate that parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of your nervous system that helps you relax and ground yourself, paced breathing is one of the most effective tools. So paced breathing, you need to have the kind of rest in between the inhale and exhale. So you would do an inhale and then hold or rest and then exhale. And you can do it anywhere, right? That's why it's one of the easiest ones. And then also I think just breaking things down, right? We often get overwhelmed when we start looking at the big picture and all the things we have to do. So if you can break stuff down even into say cue cards or just one task at a time, so you're not looking at your whole list all at once, then it seems much more manageable and you just, do your card, flip to the next one, keep going. Those are kind of two quick strategies off the top of my head.
Thank you. Another question I had is, how do you differentiate when stress is good stress versus when it becomes bad stress?
Yeah, that's a great question because, when we look at that, eustress being the good stress and then distress being kind of the bad stress, in between, I also like sometimes to talk about tolerable stress, which is also, it's good stress, right? So differentiating between them, I would say eustress is a stress that helps you go. So it's when your stress is productive, right? So maybe it makes you write faster, think faster, run faster. And when it becomes distress, it kind of makes you stop. So then it's when you start feeling stuck or you start having actions or behaviors or thoughts that keep you stuck. Then it's the stop versus the go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Just one last question. For one of our listeners out there who might be struggling right now, what would you want to say to them?
It's Kaya saying that my mom used to say to me all the time is coming to mind, and it's this too shall pass, that nothing is permanent. And so when we think about how this moment might be very distressing, in that moment, ask yourself, are you safe? Are you going to make it to the next moment? And if you can answer yes, in this moment I am safe, then yes, you can make it to the next moment, right? And just take it moment by moment, because everything keeps changing and everything does pass and change in time. So just keep going and reach out. That's another big message I was sending. Reach out for support, whether it's friends, family, staff, professional help, whatever it is you think you might need. We're in this together and it takes a village, so don't do it alone.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, so now we're going to go into some tips and some ideas of how to manage this stress that's causing such big of a problem in your life. So we got a couple techniques and some tips and more people who you can talk to.
So I know that what helps me for stress management is just taking a break and really analyzing the situation, realizing that it's not the end of the world, and just chilling. I like to meditate. I meditate every night before bed, just 5 minutes, calm down, and let your body de-stress from the day.
Or what I like to do is I like to take walks. It gives me some getting out of the house, out of my room, get some deep breaths, some easy, nice peaceful thinking without too many distractions.
I also like to work out, which helps boost your mental mood. It helps and it helps with your cognitive abilities.
So another key technique of managing this stress is to talk about it. So there's a couple people or things you can talk to. For example, at school, we have a school counselor who's really helpful to talk to if we need the help. But that's the same with a lot of trusted adults, like our teachers.
Our mentors on our FRC teams.
Our friends are very helpful. They'll help you, relieve that stress just because they're fun to hang out with.
And our pets. Our pets are important to keep in our lives too. Like, I have 2 dogs, and I just love them to bits. Petting them also releases, endorphins in my brain, so it makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah, as long as you're saying something, out loud. So even, looking at yourself in the mirror and saying it to yourself will help you acknowledge what's happening with this stress and realize that, maybe I need some help with this. Which will get you to find some support. So there's a couple bigger resources that you can find. For example, Kids Helpline. Just look online if you don't have an idea. Some other tips for decompressing.
Just do something that you love and that makes you happy. Because if you're happy, then stress melts away sometimes.
Yeah, so that's kind of part of the taking a break part. Take a break, do something you like, have some fun in your life, and then figure out problem later. And also, one of the biggest things that many teens, I guess adults too, struggle with is going to sleep at a good time. That deep sleep is really, really good for your mental health.
Because in sleep, that is when your body repairs itself and gets itself ready for a new day again.
I know this might not be possible for some people who have really intensive jobs or project to the next day. It can be hard, but try to get that deep sleep as much as possible.
It is also really important, if you're not doing well, to recognize it and just take a day for yourself. Calm down, do something that you really enjoy, and make sure that you're feeling refreshed again for when you come back to the issue. That way, it'll reduce some of the stress, and maybe you will have thought of a way to resolve it, or a way that you can do something else that won't cause the stress.
Yeah, so just ask, for example, in school, ask your teacher or let them know, hey, I'm having a little tough time with mental health. Can I get an extension on the project or something? I guarantee they'll say yes.
To deal with stress, I listen to music.
I deal with stress by going outside, and I like to go on walks. Sometimes I'm outside for a really long time, and it just really helps me clear my mind and relax.
When I'm stressed, I read a book.
My favorite way of dealing with stress is just playing video games. And if it's a really hard video game and I get more stressed, well, I just have to deal with it.
When I'm stressed, I sleep.
I deal with stress by listening to music and painting.
I listen to music and go on walks.
When I'm stressed, I like to get outside and take my dogs for a walk.
This shout out goes to Alcott Plastic, who donated some pool noodles to us. Thank you so much. Thank you, listeners. The next episode is Game Strategy, Ins and Outs of Competition. Where can we find this podcast, Dylan?
We can find this on the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. It'll probably be out when, Alexis?
March 6th, 2025. So stay tuned, and
we'll see you there!